At the wedding, my mother-in-law suddenly pulled off my wig, exposing my bald head to everyone, but then something no one expected happened. For 2 years, I had been battling cancer. Long treatments, sterile hospital rooms, endless chemotherapy that drained me of life and stole my hair until one day the doctor finally said the words I'd been longing to hear. "You are healthy." That very same day, my beloved asked me to marry him. Through tears of joy, I accepted without hesitation. We began planning our wedding. I searched for the right dress, fussed over every detail, and secretly wished my hair might grow back a little. But it didn't. The mirror still showed my bare head. So I bought a wig to feel safe. I feared what others might think. Some of my fiancé's relatives knew I had been ill, but not exactly how, so I prayed they wouldn't notice the wig. Finally, the big day arrived, dressed in white, with him beside me, the church glowing and filled with quiet chatter. Everything looked perfect until she appeared. My mother-in-law. She had never approved of me, and I knew why. She believed I couldn't give her son children, and that he deserved a healthy wife. Without warning, she came closer and ripped the wig from my head. Her triumphant voice filled the church. "Look at her. She's bald. I warned you, but you wouldn't listen." Laughter echoed. Some guests turned away. Others stood frozen. I covered my head with shaking hands, tears stinging. Humiliation, pain, shame consumed me. My groom held me tightly, whispering comfort, though his hand trembled. And then something happened that stunned everyone, and she instantly regretted it. The priest took a slow step forward, paused, and spoke, not loudly, but with a voice that filled every corner of the church. "Stop," he said. "This is sacred ground. And what you just did was not only cruel, it was cowardly." The room went silent. Even the organist sat frozen, hands still above the keys. He looked at me, then at my fiancé, then back at the guests. "You all just witnessed something ugly. But this woman," he gestured to me, "she is not the one to be ashamed. She survived something that steals lives daily. She showed up today with grace and love in her heart. That is beauty. That is strength. If you believe people with cancer still deserves love, subscribe now to support this channel. You won't want to miss the next one." I stood there, still shaking, tears now pouring freely. But not from shame anymore, from something else. From relief. From the strange sense that someone had finally said what I couldn't. My groom gently took my hand and led me up the altar steps. "I love you," he said in a voice only I could hear. "With or without hair. With or without anything. You're everything." Behind us, his mother gasped, possibly realizing she had lost something much bigger than just the crowd's approval. But it didn't stop there. The priest looked straight at her and added, "If you cannot support this union with love, then I kindly ask you to leave now." A few people gasped. No one moved. She scoffed, adjusted her shawl, and looked around like she expected someone to come to her defense. But no one did. My husband turned around and said, "Mom, you've said enough. If you can't apologize, please go." She sputtered. "You're choosing her over your own mother?" He nodded. "Yes. And I do it again every day." It was the first time I'd seen her stunned silent. She grabbed her bag. "I promise you'll never get pregnant," she shouted at me, and walked down the aisle, heels clacking on the marble like thunder. The doors closed behind her with a soft thud. The room stayed quiet. Then, unexpectedly, a voice from the back row called out, "I'm proud of you, sweetheart." It was my Aunt Lynn, a tough woman with a raspy smoker's voice and a heart the size of a mountain. She stood up, clapped once. Another clap followed, then another, and suddenly people were standing, clapping. For me. Not everyone joined in. A few of my mother-in-law's cousins sat stiffly, arms crossed. But the rest? The rest gave me back the joy she tried to take. The priest smiled, raised his hands, and calmly said, "Shall we continue?" I didn't wear the wig for the rest of the ceremony. My head was bare, but I'd never felt more dressed in my life. The reception afterward was surreal. We danced, laughed, even cried some more. Guests came up to me and said things like, "You're brave," or "My sister went through the same thing." One woman even said, "I've had alopecia for years. You made me feel seen today." But of course, the drama wasn't done. Because the next morning we woke up to a Facebook post from her. A photo of me at the altar, bald, with a caption that read, "This is what my son married. Guess we all settle at some point." It hurt. I won't lie. I hadn't even opened my eyes fully when my phone started vibrating from the notifications. But here's where things took an unexpected turn. Her post? It went viral. But not the way she thought. Hundreds, then thousands of people commented, calling her cruel, heartless, disgusting. Cancer survivors began reposting it with their own stories. Hashtags started popping up. Hashtag bald bride, hashtag survivor strength. One of my college friends who works in PR called and said, "Girl, you're trending." And not because of her hate, but because you're inspiring people. Her post was reported and taken down within a day. But the messages kept coming. A woman from New Zealand wrote to say her daughter was scared to go to prom bald, and now she wasn't. A man from Detroit said he cried because he'd watched his wife go through chemo and it brought everything back. Even some of my husband's distant cousins, ones who had stayed silent, reached out to apologize for ever doubting me. And the best part? 3 days later, I got a message from a bridal magazine. They wanted to feature us. Not just as a love story, but as a statement. The interview was nerve-wracking. I'd never imagined I'd talk about my diagnosis, my baldness, my wedding trauma on such a public scale. But I did. Because suddenly, I wasn't just a bride. I was a survivor, with a platform. A woman who had something to say. And people were listening. As for my mother-in-law, she went quiet. No calls. No apology. Not even a note. But karma has a strange way of knocking. A few months later, my husband and I were at the supermarket when we ran into one of her friends. An older woman named Rosa, who always wore too much perfume but was sweet. She pulled me aside and whispered, "She's been telling people she regrets what she did. She's embarrassed. Won't show her face at church." I didn't feel joy in that moment, just peace. Sometimes people learn the hard way. Sometimes they don't learn at all. But I wasn't going to wait for her to change to start living fully. But one day I met someone I never expected. I started volunteering with a local cancer support group. Once a week, I'd sit with patients during chemo. I'd hold their hands, tell them they weren't alone. One of them, her name was Sanvi, was just 17 and terrified. Her hair was falling out in clumps, and she hated looking in the mirror. I told her about the wedding, the wig, the snatch, the applause. She laughed. "That's insane," she said. "I would have just hidden forever." But the next week, she came in bald, head held high. "You inspired me," she whispered. "If you could face a whole church like that, I can face this place." Make sure to subscribe to this channel to support those with cancer. Everybody deserves a chance at life. I didn't cry in front of her, but in the car I bawled. Because that's when it clicked. My worst moment had become someone else's hope. And isn't that the strangest kind of blessing? Years have passed since that day. My hair eventually grew back. But I still go out bald sometimes just because I can. Just because I'm not hiding anymore. My husband? He's still my best friend. He kisses my head every night, hair or not. And my mother-in-law? She eventually reached out. An email. Not quite an apology, more like a surrender. I've made mistakes. I see that now. I won't ask you to forgive me, but I want to know my grandchildren. Yes. I got pregnant. A miracle, some might say. The same body she thought was broken gave us twin girls. And when she came to visit them for the first time, I looked her dead in the eyes and said, "You don't get to shame me and then slide back in without owning what you did." She nodded. "I know. I'm sorry. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't all healed. But it was a start. And sometimes, a shaky start is still better than silence. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. People will try to define you by your weakest moment. But your power, your real, unshakable power, is who you become after. Let them talk. Let them doubt. Just keep showing up with love anyway. If this touched you in any way, share it. Someone else might need this reminder today.